Alright, let's be real. Everybody loves a good scary story, but there's something about haunted houses that just hits different. You know that feeling when the air gets colder, the lights flicker for no reason, and suddenly, you're not sure if you're alone anymore? Yeah, that's what tonight is all about. We're not talking about some cheap haunted attractions, or the kind of funhouse you find at a carnival. Nope. These are real places, real houses, real people who swore they saw things. Shadows moving in the hallway, doors slamming on their own, voices whispering their names when nobody was there. And here's the creepy part. Most of these houses are still standing. You can literally go visit them if you're brave enough. So buckle up, grab a blanket, turn off the lights if you dare. Because tonight, we're diving into the top 10 most terrifying haunted houses in the world. Each one has its own dark secrets, spine-chilling stories, and moments that'll stick with you long after this video is over. Think you can handle it? Let's find out. This house looks innocent at first glance. White columns, old southern charm, wrapped in moss-covered oak trees. It's the kind of place that tourists love to snap pictures of. But behind that pretty face, it's hiding a history soaked in death, betrayal, and ghost stories that'll keep you awake at night. Locals call it one of America's most haunted homes. And honestly, after you hear the stories, you might agree. The most famous ghost here is a woman named Chloe. She was enslaved on the plantation in the early 1800s, and depending on which version of the story you hear, Chloe's life ended in pure tragedy. Here's how the legend goes. Chloe was caught eavesdropping on the family she served. To punish her, her ear was cut off, and she started wearing a green turban to hide it. Desperate to win back favor, or maybe to seek revenge, she baked a cake laced with crushed oleander leaves, a deadly poison. But instead of punishing the master of the house, the cake ended up killing his wife and 2 of their daughters. Horrified, the other enslaved people feared the master's wrath, so they dragged Chloe to a tree outside and hanged her. Ever since then, people claim Chloe never really left. Guests and staff swear they've seen a woman in a green turban wandering the halls, sometimes staring into mirrors, sometimes just standing quietly in the corner of a room, watching. And the creepiest part? There is an old photograph taken at the plantation in the 1990s where you can clearly see a shadowy figure of a woman standing between 2 buildings, wearing what looks like a turban. Paranormal experts analyzed it and couldn't explain it. Inside the plantation, there's this one antique mirror that guests can't stop talking about. According to local law, when the Woodruff family, the plantation owners, died, their spirits got trapped inside that mirror because it wasn't covered with a cloth during mourning, like tradition required. Visitors claim they've seen handprints appear on the glass, on the inside of the mirror. Others say faces, sad, pale, almost screaming, show up for a few seconds before fading away. Can you imagine walking by a mirror and seeing someone else's reflection, but there's nobody standing next to you? Yeah, that's the kind of nightmare fuel this place delivers. People who stay overnight at the Myrtles often report hearing footsteps pacing back and forth upstairs when no one is there. Doors creak open on their own. Chandeliers swing gently, even when the air is completely still. And sometimes, guests wake up to the sound of a child giggling softly right by their bed. One woman shared that, while she was taking a tour, she suddenly felt someone tugging on her shirt. She turned around, expecting to see a kid, only to find an empty hallway. Another guest swore that she heard her name whispered directly into her ear while standing in the dining room. The guide was across the room, and no one else was near her. It's like the house itself is alive, playing tricks on anyone who dares to walk in. The plantation leans into its haunted reputation. They run ghost tours at night, complete with lanterns and storytellers. But here's the thing. Even the guides admit that sometimes the house takes control. Lights flicker, doors slam, and guests get so spooked they bolt out mid-tour. One guide recalled leading a small group when suddenly, all the candles they were holding went out at the exact same time. No wind, no draft, just complete darkness. And then, in that silence, They all heard footsteps circling them. The group panicked, rushed outside, and swore they'd never come back. So why does the Myrtles plantation hold such a tight grip on people's imagination? Maybe it's because it's not just one ghost story. It's layers of them. Chloe, the poisoned family, the trapped souls in the mirror, the phantom children laughing in the halls. It's like the walls themselves soaked up centuries of fear and sadness, and now they replay it for anyone who dares to listen. So yeah, if you ever find yourself in Louisiana and you think you're brave, go take that nighttime ghost tour at the Myrtles Plantation. Just don't look too long into that mirror. If you think the Myrtles Plantation was creepy, wait until you hear about the Whaley house in San Diego, California. At first glance, you might think, come on, San Diego. Sunshine, beaches, tacos. How scary can it be? But trust me, this place has been called the most haunted house in America. And once you hear what's gone down inside those walls, you'll understand why people are still terrified to even walk through the front door. The Whaley house was built back in 1857 by Thomas Whaley, and honestly, it's a gorgeous piece of history. Big white walls, green shutters, a front porch that just screams classic California. But underneath all that charm, the land it sits on was already cursed. Before the house was even built, that spot was used as a public execution site. Yeah, the ground literally drank blood before the first brick was ever laid. One of the men who was hanged there was a thief named Yankee Jim Robinson. He was executed in 1852, and the way people describe it, it wasn't quick or painless. He was too tall for the gallows, so when the trapdoor opened, his toes dragged along the ground. It took him almost 45 minutes to die, kicking and gasping while the crowd just watched. Guess what? When Thomas Whaley bought that land, he actually saw that hanging happen, and yet he still decided to build his dream home there. Bad choice, Thomas. Really bad choice. Almost immediately after moving in, the Whaley family started reporting strange things. Heavy footsteps echoed through the halls at night, and Thomas swore he heard the sound of boots stomping around the house. He believed it was Yankee Jim's ghost, angry that his execution site had been turned into someone's home. Guests who visit the house today still say they hear those same heavy boot steps following them from room to room. Some even say they felt the floorboards shake under invisible feet. But Yankee Jim isn't the only spirit trapped inside. The Whaley family themselves went through tragedy after tragedy within those walls. Their 18-month-old daughter, Thomas and Anna's baby girl, died from scarlet fever in the house. Later, one of their other daughters, Violet, went through a devastating divorce in a time when divorce was considered scandalous. Heartbroken and humiliated, she took her father's gun, walked upstairs, and shot herself in the chest. She was just 22 years old. Her blood literally stained the walls of that house. Visitors and staff claim Violet never left. People say they've seen a pale young woman in a long dress standing at the top of the stairs, looking down with empty eyes before vanishing. Others say they've heard soft sobbing in the upstairs hallway, like a broken-hearted woman crying alone in the dark. Even skeptics walk away from the Whaley house shaken after hearing that. And then there are the children's spirits. Tourists report seeing a little girl running through the parlor, laughing, but when they follow the sound, the room is completely empty. Some even claim to have felt a small hand slip into theirs while on tour, only to look down and realize nobody is there. Imagine walking through an old haunted house and suddenly feeling a child holding your hand. That's the kind of bone-chilling moment that sticks with you forever. The house is now a museum, open to the public, and the staff there will tell you straight up, this place is haunted. Even paranormal investigators who spent the night there admit they couldn't explain half of what happened. Cold spots appear in the middle of warm rooms. Lights flicker without electricity issues, and cameras sometimes catch strange mists floating through the air. One tourist swore she saw the figure of a man with a rope around his neck standing in the hallway. She freaked out, left the building, and refused to go back inside. What makes the Whaley house so disturbing isn't it just the number of ghosts. It is how layered the tragedies are. You've got Yankee Jim, whose slow, painful death seems to echo in the walls. You've got Violet, a young woman whose heartbreak was so strong it scarred the house forever. You've got innocent children who died too soon, still trying to play with visitors. And then, of course, you've got the Whaley family themselves, who all eventually died but never seemed to move on. It's like the house refuses to let any soul escape once it gets its grip on them. Even the US Department of Commerce once declared it haunted, which is insane when you think about it. Like, a government office literally said this place is paranormal. Celebrities like Regis Philbin and even paranormal TV shows have filmed there, all reporting the same unexplainable stuff. And every Halloween, the line of people waiting to get a tour proves one thing. No matter how scared we are, humans can't resist peeking into the darkness. So if you ever find yourself in San Diego, enjoying the sunshine and good vibes, remember this little detour you can take. Walk into the Whaley house if you dare. Maybe you'll hear those heavy boot steps behind you. Maybe you'll feel that icy hand in yours. Or maybe, if you're unlucky, Violet will be waiting at the top of the stairs, staring straight into your soul. And that, my friends, is why the Whaley house earns a spot on this list. It doesn't matter how pretty the house looks on the outside. The moment you step inside, the darkness swallows you. Some say the ghosts there are just echoes of the past. Others believe they're trapped, angry, and reaching out for anyone who dares to disturb their eternal rest. Either way, one visit is enough to convince you that this house isn't just haunted. It's cursed. If you thought California sunshine couldn't get darker than the Whaley house, think again, because on the opposite coast sits one of the most chilling homes in America, the Amityville house in Long Island, New York. Even if you've never stepped foot in it, chances are you've heard the name before. Movies, books, documentaries, it's one of the most famous haunted houses in the world. And trust me, the real story behind it is way scarier than any Hollywood script. It all started in November of 1974. A young man named Ronald DeFeo Jr. picked up a rifle and murdered his entire family while they slept inside that house. His parents and his 4 siblings. 6 people wiped out in one night. The thing that made it even more horrifying, they were all found lying face down in their beds, as if they hadn't even moved when the shots rang out. No signs of struggle, no one trying to run. Just silence. To this day, no one can fully explain how 6 people were shot in the same house and not one of them got up. The murders alone would have been enough to leave the house cursed forever. But then came the Lutz family. Just a year later, George and Kathy Lutz moved into the house with their 3 kids. They knew about the murders, but hey, the price was too good to resist. Big mistake. Within just 28 days, they were gone, running out of the house and never coming back. Why? Because what they experienced inside was beyond terrifying. George claimed he would wake up every night at exactly 3:15 a.m., the same time the murders took place. He said he'd hear footsteps stomping around the house when nobody was awake. Kathy reported feeling as if someone was constantly touching her, even when she was alone. She had vivid nightmares about the murders, down to the exact details of how each family member was killed. The kids kept talking about a pig-like creature with glowing red eyes they saw outside their window at night. They even gave it a name, Jody. George swore he once looked out the window and saw those red eyes staring back at him from the darkness. Imagine tucking your kids into bed and then seeing a massive shadow with glowing eyes watching from the yard. That's the kind of fear you don't shake off. Things got even stranger. Doors ripped off their hinges, slime oozed down the walls, crucifixes flipped upside down, and one night, George said he woke up to find Kathy levitating above the bed. She swore her face changed in the mirror, twisted into something hideous before returning to normal. Neighbors reported seeing strange shadows moving behind the windows when they knew the house was empty. Paranormal investigators were called in, and even they admitted the place was filled with unexplainable energy. The Lutz family didn't just leave. They left everything behind: clothes, furniture, toys, because they were too terrified to go back. That alone says a lot. People don't abandon their entire lives unless something truly horrific has happened. And ever since then, the Amityville house has been locked into American horror history. Of course, skeptics argue that the Lutz family made the whole thing up for money, since their story became the basis of books and movies. But here's the thing. Multiple visitors, neighbors, and investigators reported similar experiences. Whether or not every detail was exaggerated, there's no denying that the house itself carries a heavy, oppressive feeling. Many who step inside describe it as being instantly watched, as if the walls themselves are alive. And then there's the fact that the murders actually happened. 6 innocent lives ended violently in that house. You can't erase that kind of energy. Trauma leaves scars, and some people believe the Amityville house absorbed every ounce of that horror, and now plays it back on a loop for anyone unlucky enough to live there. Over the years, owners have come and gone. Some insist they never experienced anything strange, while others quietly sell and refuse to talk about it. But the house's reputation is so infamous that people still drive by just to see it, snapping pictures of the iconic windows shaped like sinister eyes glaring out at the street. Even if nothing supernatural ever happened again, the history alone makes it impossible to see the place as just a regular home. What makes Amityville stand out isn't just the ghost stories, it's how it combines real, brutal crime with supernatural legend. It's one thing to hear about shadows or whispers in an old house. It's another thing entirely when the blood of an entire family is literally part of the foundation. That's the kind of story that doesn't fade away, no matter how many times people try to debunk it. So picture this, a beautiful, peaceful-looking house in a quiet Long Island neighborhood. White siding, a boat dock out back, green grass, friendly neighbors. From the outside, it looks like the American dream. But step inside, and you're walking into a nightmare. The kind of nightmare where history, tragedy, and terror are burned into the walls forever. The Amityville house isn't just haunted. It's a reminder that sometimes the scariest places are the ones that look the most normal. Behind those shutters, entire families were destroyed. And maybe, just maybe, the spirits of the dead are still there, waiting for the next family foolish enough to move in. Deep in the French Quarter of New Orleans stands a house so infamous, locals still lower their voices when they talk about it. This is the LaLaurie mansion, a beautiful, towering home with a blood-soaked history. On the outside, it looks elegant, like the kind of place you'd want to tour for its architecture and old-world charm. But once you learn what really happened behind those walls, you'll never see it the same way again. Some people say it's not just haunted, it's cursed. The story starts in the early 1800s with Madame Delphine LaLaurie, a wealthy socialite known for throwing extravagant parties. High society adored her for her beauty and charm. Guests would fill her home, drinking champagne, dancing, and admiring her grand lifestyle. But what they didn't know, or maybe chose to ignore, was the nightmare happening upstairs, hidden from the polished halls and candlelit rooms. You see, Madame LaLaurie was cruel beyond imagination. Neighbors whispered about the screams they sometimes heard at night. Guests noticed enslaved servants who looked bruised, weak, and terrified, but nobody dared question her directly. After all, she was powerful, respected, and feared. But in 1834, everything changed when a fire broke out in the mansion. As people rushed in to help, they discovered something straight out of a horror movie. A locked attic filled with enslaved people who had been tortured in ways too brutal to describe. Shackles, chains, scars, evidence of years of cruelty hidden behind the grandeur of her home. The discovery shocked the entire city. An angry mob gathered, ready to tear the house down brick by brick. But Madame LaLaurie escaped, fleeing New Orleans and vanishing from history, leaving behind nothing but horror and unanswered questions. Ever since that fire, people have sworn that the spirits of those tortured souls never left. The LaLaurie mansion quickly became known as one of the most haunted places in America. Neighbors say they hear screaming and crying echoing from the house at night, long after it was abandoned. Visitors have reported seeing shadowy figures moving across the windows, even when the building was empty. Tour guides who pass by on ghost walks say some guests suddenly feel faint, like the air is being crushed out of their lungs as they stand near the house. And then there are the apparitions. One man described walking past the mansion when he saw a tall figure standing silently on the balcony. Thinking it was a security guard, he looked again, only to watch the figure vanish into thin air. Others have seen faces staring down from the windows, their eyes filled with pain and anger, before disappearing when they blink. Paranormal investigators who've been inside the house reported sudden cold spots, equipment malfunctions, and recordings of unexplained voices begging for help. Some of the eeriest stories come from construction workers who tried renovating the mansion over the years. Tools would disappear, only to show up in strange places. Doors slammed shut on their own, trapping workers inside rooms until they were forced open from the outside. One worker swore he heard chains rattling in the attic, followed by faint whispers calling his name. He left the job and never went back. The LaLaurie mansion has become such a symbol of horror that even Hollywood took notice. Nicolas Cage once bought the property, hoping to own a piece of New Orleans history, but according to locals, he didn't last long. Rumor has it the house's energy was too much to handle. He lost the property after financial troubles, and some say the mansion itself brought him bad luck. Whether you believe that or not, the house's reputation for bringing misfortune is something people in New Orleans talk about often. What makes this house stand out from others on the list is that its history isn't just paranormal. It is painfully real. The suffering that happened inside wasn't imagined. It wasn't just whispered rumors. It was documented, witnessed, and exposed. The cruelty that Madame LaLaurie inflicted left a scar so deep that it feels like the very walls absorbed the pain. And now, anyone who steps near it claims that pain reaches out, wrapping around you like icy hands you can't escape. Today, the mansion is privately owned and not open for public tours. But that doesn't stop thousands of people from stopping by every year, hoping to catch a glimpse of the supernatural. Some snap photos and later discover strange, misty shapes floating across their pictures. Others just stand on the street, staring up at the dark windows, waiting for something. Anything to move. And if you ask locals, many will tell you, if you listen closely enough at night, you'll hear the faint cries of those who never got justice. So, imagine walking down a quiet French quarter street. The music and laughter from bars fade behind you. The moonlight glows faintly, casting shadows on cobblestone streets. And then you pass the LaLaurie mansion. The air suddenly feels heavier, colder. You glance up at the balcony, and for a split second, you see someone watching you. But when you blink, the balcony is empty. Was it your imagination? Or did one of those restless souls just remind you that this house is never truly silent? If you ever travel to Edinburgh, Scotland, you might be drawn to its medieval streets, its castles, and its rich history. But beneath the cobblestones of this old city lies something far darker, an underground world filled with shadows, silence, and stories that will freeze your blood. This place is known as the Edinburgh Vaults, a series of underground chambers that have earned the reputation of being one of the most haunted locations in the world. Back in the 1700s, Edinburgh was booming with trade and population. To create more space, the city built vaults beneath the South Bridge, dark stone chambers carved under the bustling streets. At first, these vaults were used for workshops, storage, and taverns. But soon, they became something else entirely. As the city grew, the vaults turned into a hiding place for the unwanted, criminals, the poor, and those who had nowhere else to go. Imagine narrow, damp corridors lit only by candlelight, filled with the smell of rot, echoing with the whispers of people who lived in complete darkness. But life in the vaults wasn't just miserable, it was dangerous. Thieves, murderers, and even body snatchers used the underground network. In fact, legend says that Burke and Hare, Scotland's most infamous serial killers, once prowled these vaults, capturing victims to sell their bodies to medical schools. Over time, the vaults gained a reputation as a place of suffering, violence, and death. And that reputation didn't fade. It only grew stronger. When the vaults were rediscovered in the 1980s, paranormal investigators, historians, and thrill seekers rushed inside. What they found was chilling. Some chambers still had remnants of fireplaces, broken bottles, and scraps of belongings left behind by people who once called this place home. But more terrifying than the physical evidence were the encounters people began reporting. Cold spots appeared suddenly in the middle of a room. Visitors described the feeling of being watched, even when standing in complete silence. And then there are the shadows. Strange, dark figures darting across the walls. Too fast to be human. Too solid to be tricks of the light. One of the most famous spirits said to haunt the vaults is known as Mr. Boots. According to legend, Mr. Boots is a tall, angry figure who stomps loudly through the chambers. People say they hear his heavy footsteps echoing behind them, only to turn and find no one there. Others have reported being shoved, scratched, or even having their hair pulled by an unseen force. Paranormal teams who'd be investigated claim to have captured recordings of growls and voices warning them to leave. One chilling EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, captured a deep male voice whispering, "Get out." Another commonly reported ghost is that of a small child. Tourists and guides alike have described feeling a small hand grab theirs in the darkness, as if a lost child is reaching out for comfort. Some even say they've heard faint laughter or sobbing echoing from the smaller chambers. If you thought the Myrtles plantation was chilling, wait until you hear about number 2, the Villisca Axe murder house in Iowa. This small white house looks completely ordinary from the outside, like something out of a postcard from early 1900s America. But inside, it carries one of the darkest and most terrifying stories in U.S. history. On the night of June 10th, 1912, the Moore family, Josiah, his wife Sarah, and their 4 children, went to sleep after a church event. 2 neighbor girls who had stayed over joined them. In the dead of night, someone slipped into the house with an axe. By morning, all 8 people inside were brutally murdered, bludgeoned in their beds. To this day, no one knows for sure who did it. The case remains officially unsolved, adding to the chilling aura around the house. The horror of what happened left a stain that time hasn't erased. Visitors who stay overnight report hearing children's voices whispering in the dark. Some say they've heard the faint cry of a little girl calling out for her mother. Others have captured EVPs of screams, knocks, or the sound of footsteps moving slowly down the hallway when no one is there. People who've slept in the upstairs bedrooms say they wake up gasping for air, as if a heavy presence is pressing down on their chest. Tourists often describe cold spots and sudden waves of nausea, while investigators claim they've been scratched or touched by unseen hands. Some refuse to even step inside the attic, convinced it's where the killer hid before striking. The house has become so infamous that paranormal shows from around the world have filmed there. Even hardened ghost hunters have admitted it's one of the few places that truly scared them. Imagine sitting in that quiet, dark house, hearing the faint creak of the stairs as if someone is coming up, knowing the family was slaughtered just a few feet away. The past never left Villisca. That's why this innocent-looking little home earns the number 2 spot. But if you think that's terrifying, wait until you hear about number 1. The Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California. This mansion is unlike any other. Built by Sarah Winchester, heir to the rifle fortune, it's a labyrinth of endless hallways, staircases to nowhere, and doors that open into walls or even drop straight outside. Why? Because Sarah believed she was cursed, haunted by the spirits of everyone killed by Winchester rifles. A psychic told her the only way to keep the ghosts at bay was to build. So she built. For nearly 40 years, construction never stopped. The result is a house that doesn't make sense. It's massive. 160 rooms, secret passages, twisting corridors. Walking through it feels like stepping into another world, one designed to confuse the living and the dead alike. But here's the creepy part. Even with all her effort, the spirits are said to still roam the halls. Guests have reported cold spots, phantom footsteps, and the sound of doors opening and closing on their own. Some swear they've seen Sarah herself, dressed in black, silently wandering through the endless maze she created. Others say they've felt a presence following them through the corridors, never close enough to see, but always there. What makes the Winchester house so terrifying is that it's not just haunted, it's madness carved into wood and stone. It feels like the house itself is alive, growing, twisting, holding onto the spirits Sarah tried so desperately to escape. And that's why it sits at number 1, the ultimate haunted house. So there you have it, the top 10 most terrifying haunted houses from around the world. From cursed plantations and underground vaults to brutal murder homes and endless mansions, these places remind us that sometimes the scariest monsters don't hide in forests or caves. They wait for you inside a house. Now, I want to hear from you. Which one of these houses freaked you out the most? Would you dare to spend a night in the Villisca Axe murder house? Or get lost inside the Winchester mansion? Let me know down in the comments. I'm seriously curious which one gave you chills. And hey, if you loved these stories and want more terrifying tales from around the world, make sure you subscribe to Gang Stories, hit that like button, and ring the bell so you never miss out. We've got plenty more nightmares to share, if you're brave enough to keep watching. Until next time, this is Gang Stories, signing off. Sleep well, if you can.